Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
I'm Pauline Verzosa.
And I'm Sean Yao.
The big stories tonight. The Agriculture Department wants to prove critics wrong. DA officials sampled the rice they plan to sell at 20 pesos per kilo. Did it pass the taste test?
And the rift widens further between President Bongbong Marcos and his sister Imee, as the senator now wants a full-blown probe on government officials involved in the arrest of former President Rodrigo Duterte.
And as political bickerings draw out, we see how Filipinos are responding via rating the country's top officials in terms of performance and trust.
Kaya nga yung sinasabi nila na pangit ito, kaya ko nang palakihin yung issue. That is the least of my problems.
Visayas will get the first taste of the much-touted 20 pesos per kilo rice of government. But before that, agriculture officials try the cooked grains themselves to prove this rice variety can be consumed by humans. Their verdict in tonight's big story.
A taste test secretary, Francisco Chu Laurel, and his officials at the Department of Agriculture just had to do. That's amid criticism the grains the DA is about to sell at 20 pesos per kilo are not fit for human consumption. Vice President Sara Duterte even likened its quality to pig feed. The stock officials ate came from the National Food Authority, which will be the source of cheaper rice for rollout soon. So how did the NFA rice fare to the commercial variety when cooked? The grains are a bit crushed compared to those sold in the market, but it still turned out white and somehow fluffy.
This is basically the 29 and the 33. So it's the same rice. Kaya nga yung sinasabi nila na pangit ito, kaya ayaw ko nang banggitin yung sinabi ng ating isang political leader. That is the least of my problems.
Starting May 1st, the 20 peso rice will be rolled out in the Visayas. Other areas, including Metro Manila, will get a chance at the cheaper rice from May 2 onwards. For the pilot run, the DA is set to release 370,000 metric tons of NFA rice, which they target to sell until December. President Bongbong Marcos has earmarked 4.5 billion pesos to fund the program. The plan right now is to divide the subsidy between the national and local governments. However, the DA is still awaiting guidance from COMELEC if the sale of the 20 peso rice in Kadiwa stores and local governments will be granted exemption from the election spending ban. In case this does not happen, the program's rollout will have to be postponed until after the May 12 polls. At the moment, the cheapest rice in this wet market is 40 pesos per kilo, while some still sell for as much as 65 pesos. For News 5 Caricator, we are One News.
Why does everyone have to do the taste test? Every admin, it happens.
Yeah, you have them eating
humans
tahong
eat it.
or...
To prove that it's safe for human consumption.
Well, this wasn't so bad. I mean, it's rice. Yung mga tahong na may red tide, yun yung parang...
Nakakatakot.
Nakakatakot
Buwis buhay.
Medyo. Pero, you know, we have to ask later the Agriculture Department, how long can they subsidize this?
How long they can sustain the program, because it is a campaign promise, right, of President Marcos. He did say 20 peso per kilo na kanin. But I also saw a comment after this video surfaced of DA officials trying the rice. Yes, masarap naman siya when bagong luto, but ang kanin daw na ganyan minsan mabilis mapanis. So it still begs the question if the quality is good enough for...
And then the other, in the report, it was stated na parang maliliit yung grains, parang putol yung bigas.
Yung broken rice.
And as we spoke to ASINAG and the Federation for Free Farmers, they pointed out na nasa mga 13 pesos yung subsidy ng government per kilo.
That's what we want to ask.
Like how much ba yung naka-allocate?
Yeah, exactly. Dapat hindi losing for the farmers. No?
So that's going to be a really hard spend. But ang dami nilang tumikim, no? We want to really ask them also how they looked happy
Actually,
naman.
oo nga, pero di ba tasteless? Kailangan may ulam, sana may adobo man lang. O pag-oo, pinakbe.
Parang hindi fair dun sa kanin, no? Pag walang ulam.
Oo, di ba?
Baka hindi na kasi malasahan talaga yung kanin pag the ulam will mask the real taste of the rice. Diba?
Pero talaga ba, may kanin na mas
Masarap.
mabilis
Mapanis.
Mapanis. Meron daw talaga. I was having this conversation with our, some friends of mine who can cook. Kasi parang sinasabihan ako minsan na, uy, ito okay to kasi pwede mo siyang iiwan ng 2 days na hindi pa rin panis. Tapos ako parang, may ganun palang rice.
Eh, di gawin mong sinangag.
O yun yung solution.
Diba?
The Filipino solution
Yeah.
to
Oh,
saving
we're
waste.
still awaiting our guest from the Agriculture Department. But should we move on? Oh, he's here. All right, we have with us the spokesperson of the Department of Agriculture, Assistant Secretary for Special Concerns, Arnel De Besa. Good evening, ASEC.
Hi, good evening po. Magandang gabi po sa lahat na nakikinig at nanonood. Happy to be here.
So, kamusta yung lasa ng kanin po?
Kaya, tinikman namin yun kanina. Actually, matagal na naman namin yun na kinakain. At yung bigas na rin na yun, yung binibenta natin sa Rice for All. At yun din yung binibenta doon sa ating nauna na P29 program. So, it has been in the market for quite a long time. At very acceptable naman ito doon sa ating mga mamimili. At wala naman tayong nakikita except for one instance dati na merong ang lumabas na meron daw bokbok. But it was already recalled. Nagkaroon lang yun ng konting problema during that time. But nevertheless, yung bigas at saka yung panin ay maganda yung quality.
Kasi po ang sinasabi ay matagal na tong nakaimbak sa NFA warehouses. How long has the rice been in stock?
Actually, yung bigas natin sa NFA, karamihan dyan ay yung bagong na-harvest last season. At kung meron man na anong tawag dito, yung kanina, yung pinakita, 4 months yun eh. Yung consider natin na old stocks, yung 3 months pataas. So on average siguro nasa mga 3 to 6 months yung stocks ng NFA, nasa mga warehouses ng NFA.
May joke dito, ba't hindi man lang nanlibre si Secretary ng adobo man lang po?
Oo nga, kanina wala kaming ulam, kanin lang yung na-prepare. Pero ano naman, masarap naman yung kanin. At yun nga, sanay tayo na may ulam talaga. Nalimutan lang na mag-prepare.
Pero sir, hindi joke yung 4.5 billion na budget para dito na sinasabing will only be, for a month at least. So, paano po ba ipopondo to?
Actually, says yung 4.5 billion, ito yung, actually 5 billion yan. 5 billion will be used by FTI. Ito yung 6.5, yung 50% na subsidy kasi 13 pesos yung total subsidy. Paghahatian nyo ng FTI, GOCC under the department. At yung kalahati naman ay galing sa mga participating local government units at yung 500 million ay gagamitin for logistics, sa packaging, and for other purposes. So yung 4.5 billion talaga yung magiging subsidy. So in effect, ang magiging total subsidy will be 9 billion na gagamitin para nga doon sa 13 peso difference. Kasi bebenta pa rin ito. NFA will not entail any losses in essence kasi sasaluhin siya ng FTI. So yung pagbebenta ng NFA at 33 pesos which is the regular na inaalaw ng NFA Council. So pag binili yun, ibebenta ng 20 pesos. So yung 13 pesos na difference, yun yung papasukan ng subsidy coming from FTI at saka ng LGUs.
So 9 billion pesos until the end of the year, ang sinasabi nyo, ASEC?
Ang target nitong pondo na to ay until December of this year. At yun nga, pag-uusapan sa gabinete kung paano susuportahan yung proyekto for 2026 until 2020.
Paano naman po ang mga magsasaka, yung 13 pesos na sinasabi nyong subsidy, pag bibili ang NFA sa susunod naman, magkano po ang bili nila sa mga magsasaka?
Actually, mahal ang bili ng NFA kumpara doon sa mga local traders natin. Doon sa dry and clean, ang bilihan ngayon ay nasa 23 hanggang 24 pesos. Doon naman sa fresh harvest, nasa 17 to 18 pesos yung sariwa, yung bagong harvest natin. Yung dry and clean nga na 23 and 24, mas mahal ito kumpara yung prevailing prices ngayon ng mga traders nasa 17 to 19 pesos lamang.
So hindi talo, yun ang concern ng mga farmers groups na
Hindi.
talo ang magsasaka dito.
On the part ng NFA, hindi. Kasi talagang malaki yung bili. Last year, yung bili ng NFA on average nasa 27 dahil talaga mataas yung presyo. Last year, matandaan natin, mataas yung presyo sa international market kaya napilitan din na magtaas ang presyo ang National Food Authority. Ngayon naman, dahil bumababa ang presyo sa international market, though mataas pa rin yung pagbili ng NFA, ang inalaw kasi ng NFA Council for dry and clean, nasa 23 hanggang 30 peso yung range ng bilihan. So depende sa lugar, nagbabago rin yung bilihan ng NFA sa bawat nabibiling palay sa ating mga magsasaka.
Oh, yun ang concern ni Ses, no, nasa farmers. Pero online, concerned din yung mga tao na in order to achieve and to deliver this campaign promise of 20 pesos per kilo rice, ang ending naman daw, taong bayan pa rin daw ang nagbabayad. So, can you really say na na-achieve yung campaign promise ng 20 peso rice? Anong masasabi niyo doon, Asek?
Kung titingnan kasi natin, itong bigas ng NFA, excuse me, ang malaking issue kasi nito, malaki ngayon yung nabili ng National Food Authority na palay sa ating mga excuse me, sa mga magsasaka. Kung hindi ito i-dispose, pagdating ng panahon, i-auction din ito, ayaw natin itong hayaang mabulok, bababa rin yung halaga nito. At ang mangyari nito, i-dispose din ito eventually. So mas maganda, this early dahil malaki nga yung stocks ng NFA. Una, mapakinabangan ito ng ating mga kababayan at a lower price. Ito nga sa 20. And at the same time, matulungan din yung ating mga magsasaka. Kasi ngayon, peak ng harvest. So pag hindi rin ito mailabas agad, ngayon nasa 370,000-380,000 metric tons ng palay at bigas sa mga warehouses ng NFA. Hindi rin makakapamili yung ating NFA sa mga magsasaka ng palay. So ina-expect natin this year, mas malaki yung pondo, mga 500,000 o mahigit pa na metric tons yung mabibili ng NFA. So kung hindi naman ito ma-release, mababawasan yung o malilimitahan yung kayang bilhin ng NFA because of the limitation nga ng kanyang capacity to store sa mga warehouses.
One follow-up lang no, to that, so, somewhat related din. Last time kasi yung plano ng DA is ibenta to sa mga LGU ng rekta. I think there are 2 LGUs na bumili. Ito ba yung parang kumbaga hindi ba nag-work yung programa, nag-fail ba, walang kumagat na mga LGU kaya naging ganito yung bentahan na lang?
Yeah, nahirapan talaga ang DA kasi alam naman natin sa rice tarification law, bawal directly magbenta ang NFA, yung DA sa mga pamilihan. Yan yung isang limitasyon at para sa buffer stocking lang. At kaya nagkaroon ng declaration ng food emergency dahil na rin sa kadahilanan na yun lang yung paraan para ma-release ang stocks ng NFA sa mga lokal na pamahalaan. At nagpapasalamat tayo doon sa mga LGUs na nag-participate, as you mentioned, San Juan, Camarines Sur, itong Isabela, Mati sa Davao Oriental, at marami pang areas. At isa nga sa naging konsiderasyon din ni Secretary para rito sa pilot at saka sa initial launch nitong ating 20 pesos na bigas, itong mga LGUs na ito na nag-participate din doon sa food security emergency na nagbebenta ng 33 pesos, they will also be allowed initially to participate din dito sa ating pilot launch nitong 20 pesos na bigas.
Pero Asik, marami rin pong kumakwestiyon doon sa timing ng programang ito. No? How does the DA respond to critics saying that this is just part of a campaign strategy to secure votes po, lalo na sa Visayas where the pilot program will begin?
We do not play with politics. DA is a technical agency at ang main reason talaga namin dito, una ay yun nga, napakarami ng stocks ng NFA. At kung hindi namin yun i-release, patuloy yun na mag-i-age, bababa yung quality at saka yung magiging problema rin later on. Pangalawa, yung capacity naman ng NFA na bumili at mag-stock ng additional na palay galing sa ating mga magsasaka. So that's our only consideration. Wala sa amin yung politika at ang tinitingnan lang talaga rito ay paano ma-release ito at yun na rin makatulong sa ating mga kababayan at at the same time makatulong sa ating mga magsasaka.
And finally, ASEC, ano po ba ang latest doon sa request ng DA for an exemption from the COMELEC tungkol po doon sa spending ban?
We are still awaiting doon sa final decision ng COMELEC, and we're hoping na mapagbigyan kami at ma-launch natin ito sa May 1 hanggang May 2.
Thank you very much for talking to us, ASEC Arnel de Mesa, spokesperson of the Department of Agriculture.
All right, now less than 2 weeks before the midterm elections, the Office of the Ombudsman has handed down a shock suspension order on Cebu Governor Gwendolyn Garcia. The 6-month preventive suspension stemmed from a complaint filed against Garcia and other provincial officials over the issuance of a quarry permit in a protected area. The complaint was filed by Moises Garcia de Perine, who filed administrative charges against the governor for violation of Republic Act 6713, or the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. In a statement, Garcia said that she respects the processes of the law, and she also defended the special permit in question, saying there is an urgent need to address critical water shortage in Cebu City and 7 other LGUs. Garcia added that all decisions were undertaken in close collaborations with stakeholders. She also maintained that there was no personal interest or malice involved in the action and that it was meant to solve a problem.
One governor is suspended and another one is dismissed from office. The Ombudsman also ordered the dismissal of Albay Governor Grex Lagman for accepting protection money from alleged weteng operators. The order was dated January 28, 2025, but was released to media only today. The Ombudsman found Lagman guilty of grave misconduct, which merited, quote, dismissal from the service and all its accessory penalties. Lagman was suspended in October last year, 8 months after a former barangay chairman in Daraga filed a complaint against him. The Albay governor only reassumed office on April 21. Vice Governor Glenda Bonga will now be taking his place.
We're going to take a quick break, but coming up, Senator Amy Marcos says the arrest of Digong Duterte was part of a grand plan to bring down his political clan. Her brother, the president, has an answer to that accusation when the big story returns. Stay with us.
The big story is back with Senator Amy Marcos presenting additional findings from her Foreign Relations Committee hearings. She says former President Rodrigo Duterte's arrest in March was politically motivated and that an ICC warrant for Vice President Sara Duterte is next. Mobile Journal Denise Valdesancho with the story.
Senator Amy Marcos is adamant the arrest of former President Rodrigo Still, Amy wants the Office of the Ombudsman to investigate key cabinet members and officials of her brother involved in the arrest. These are Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla and his brother Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla, PNP Chief General Romel Marbil, and CIDG Chief Nicolas Torre III. Senator Marcos made the recommendation as she presented additional findings from her Foreign Relations Committee hearings.
Napatunayan ang motibong politikal na napag-aresto sa turnover kay PRRD sa pamagitan ng mid-election final campaign sprint action plan ng Lakas CMD noong nagtipon-tipon ang matataas ng opisyal noong petsang 22 ng Abril. Nakaraang ilang linggo lamang, inilarawan ang mga nagawang mga Oplan Horus. Isang operasyon na inilunsad noong Abril 2024 na naglalayong pabagsakin ang dalawang Duterte.
Amy also accused the administration of her brother President Bongbong Marcos of attempting to divert public attention from the issue.
Hindi inaasahan ang political backlash sa pag-aresto sa dating Pangulo. Kaya ngayon, sinusubukan nilang kontrolin ang sitwasyon sa pamamagitan ng pag-focus sa West Philippine Sea, pagsisi sa China, at sa huli ay iuugnay ang pagtaas ng suporta kay Duterte sa sinasabing kampanya disinformation ng China.
Senator Marcos, however, stopped short of saying if her brother had a hand in the alleged plans.
Masamang-masama ang loob ko, ngunit ang akin lamang, kailanman hindi kami nag-away ng aking kapatid. Yung mga amuyong sa palasyo, yung mga nariyan, yung mga lulong, ayun, sila po ang ating kaaway. At hindi ko naman kinakampihan ang isang panig laban sa isa. Ang pinapanigan ko lamang ay ang soberanya ng Pilipinas na isinusuko natin. Nakakahiya naman itong ginagawa natin na.
Ma'am, sino daw yung lulong?
Abangan po ninyo. Abangan po ninyo.
Senator Marcos also claims she has heard rumors that the International Criminal Court will soon issue an arrest warrant against Vice President Sara Duterte. She vowed to oppose the implementation of the said warrant. In a chance interview, after his sister's statements, the president only had this to say.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I disagree.
Meanwhile, the Remulla said they are ready to face any charges.
Yeah, well, I'm happy that she believes in due process. Unlike the people that she's defending.
Hindi naman tayo natatakot dyan. Kaya ginawa namin yung dapat gawin. To our best judgment.
Now, the recent Okta survey results are in, and as the research firm revealed to the Big Story last night, there have been notable movements in the trust and approval ratings of the country's top government officials. Compared to the fourth quarter Okta survey, President Marcos's trust rating dipped from 65 to 60%, while Vice President Sara Duterte's saw a noticeable jump from 49 to 58%. And when it comes to their performance approval ratings, the president's numbers dropped to 59% from 64%, while the VP's rating went up from 48 to 56%. Meantime, experiencing a decline in ratings, Senate President Cheese Escudero and House Speaker Martin Romualdez maintained strong levels of trust and approval from majority of Filipinos. Overall, majority of Filipinos trust and approve of the performance of top government officials. The Okta survey was conducted between April 2 and 5 among 1,200 adult respondents with a margin of error of plus-minus 3%.
Now let's discuss these latest survey results and the Marcoses rift with political science professor Antonio Contreras of UP Los Baños. Good evening and welcome to The Big Story.
Magandang gabi po. Good evening.
Well, first of all, this Okta survey should be, I guess, compared as well to the Pulse Asia survey where the dip of President Marcos is lower in this one. What do you make of that?
Well, at least kahit magkabi ang numbers, even if the numbers are different, the trends are similar. That the numbers for the Vice President are rising, while the numbers for the President are declining. So at least there is some consistency there, despite the fact that you correctly pointed out, magkaiba yung value. Medyo mas mataas ang kaunti itong, well, mataas ang sa Okta, samantalang ang baba naman ng rating ng Presidente dun sa polls.
Pero bakit po pababa ng pababa itong approval at popularity ni President Marcos?
Actually, maintindihan naman natin yan dahil nasa midterm na siya tapos ang honeymoon period. And that applies to all incumbents naman, whether in the Philippines or everywhere. Kapag ikaw ay nakaupo habang tumatagal ang administrasyon mo dahil nakikita yung mga pangakong hindi natupad o kaya may mga problema, bumababa talaga yan. Yan ang rule. Talagang lalo pa nga ang bababayan pag ano na siya, lame duck na siya, pag towards the later part na ng kanyang panunungkulan. Yan naman po ay talagang andyan, tawag yan, iron law na yan sa performance ng mga incumbents. Kahit naman sa presidente, ganun din nakita natin. Sa Amerika, ganun din ang nangyari sa number ni Joe Biden. So, at nagkaroon din ng epekto kasi itong pangyayari, itong nangyayari sa mga Duterte, na kung saan bukod sa na-impeach si Sara Duterte ay si dating Pangulong Duterte naman ay na-aresta at nandun na nga sa nakakulong na sa The Hague. So, siyempre nag-consolidate yung suporta ng mga Duterte base at yan, kaya umaakyat.
Pero hindi ito nagyari kay former President Duterte.
I was just about to point out.
Well,
kakaiba. May
well,
COVID pa.
Kakaiba naman kasi yung nangyari noon kasi nung una may COVID at the same time so iba yung epekto nung time na yon sapagkat ang Marcos supporters at ang Duterte supporters magkaisa. Alalahanin natin sila may alyansa ba nung time na yon. So there is no meaningful opposition at that time. The two bases were together. So that is something that is not normal in Philippine politics where you had two huge political groupings in alliance with each other. And of course, there is also, so that is something that it should not be used as a basis scientifically because it is an abnormal time.
Sir, well, the lower numbers of President Marcos were largely influenced by his lower scores sa Mindanao, which we all know is the stronghold of the Dutertes.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Nag-consolidate yung suporta ng mga Duterte sa mga lugar nila. At ang nangyari kay President Marcos naman kasi alalahanin natin maliban kasi sa Duterte supporters at saka sa Marcos supporters meron din tayong mga pinks at mga dilawan, right? Meron ba dandan pa rin yan. So hindi rin sila pro Marcos talaga. So maliban sa nagko-consolidate ang Duterte base, naandun pa rin yung mga makakampi kay Leni Robredo, yung LP, ng iba ay nananatili pa rin oppose kay Pangulong Marcos. So, yun yung the reality of the mathematics of numbers, the arithmetic of the polling.
Sir, yes, sir. But aside from that, just based on this latest Okta survey, President Marcos actually fared best among the poorest socio-economic class, na Class E. He got a 66% rating of trust sa kanila. I mean, what does that suggest, in terms of the effectiveness, the popularity of Mr. Marcos, in terms of that particular socio-economic class?
Alam mo, sa totoo lang, dapat maging maingat tayo sa pag-interpret ng mga surveys ngayon kasi minsan may mga contradictions. Bilang isang political science professor, matagal ko na sinasabi sa mga kasamahan ko na kahit scientific ang survey na ginawa mo, pag ang sinusukat natin isang population na exposed na sa mga irrational sources of information, may disinformation na, matindi na yung mga pagmanipula at pagbasahin ng mga datos at impormasyon na nalalaman ng tao, ang sinusukat natin yung ingay, hindi na scientific yung pagsungat ng ingay, pero ingay pa rin ang susukat. For example, sabi ng mga survey, 70% o 60% ng mga tao na ayaw ng pro-China na kandidato. Right? Nasa survey yan, pero tingnan mo si Bongo ang number 1. Sabi ng iba, gusto nila, agree sila sa pagkaka-arrest kay President Duterte. Gusto nilang maparusahan ng mga nagkaroon ng contribution sa war on drugs. Pero tingnan mo naman yun, tumataas ang ratings ng mga Duterte. So this is just an example, an evidence that perhaps what the surveys are now, no matter how scientific they may be, what they are surveying are irrational voices and noises. So kami sa social science, pag ganyan, magkukuha ka na ng ibang method ng data gathering. Triangulation tawag yan. Hindi ka na lang aasa sa survey. Pupunta ka na sa focus group discussion, sa informant interview, para makita mo, baka may mga ipinoprobe pa tayo, baka may probing pang kailangan. Bakit ganun ang datos? May anomalya. Ang ginagawa natin, sinusukat, napaka one-dimensional lang tinitingnan natin. It's a horse race. It's just trust rating. It's just, approval rating. But we don't understand the nuances, we don't even do cross tabulations na itong mga taong ito, kaya nangunguna si Bongo kasi hindi nila, pagdating na sa mga personalidad, nakakalimutan nila yung issue. So pag ang tao tinanong mo, ayaw niya ng kandidatong pro-China, pero pag ang pinag-uusapan ng mga tao, nalilimutan na nila yon, hindi na nila na-associate sa stand sa China yung mga kandidato.
Which means voters don't really, in the final analysis, personality at hindi issue ang kanilang...
Oh, yes. Yes, if you're going to ask them a question on issues, they will reply to issues. But at the end of the day, we'll still be governed by personalities. And that is why it's kind of hard to really just trust surveys that are one-dimensional. We have to really go into other methods. Lalo na sa panahon ngayon na ang social media, matindi na ang disinformation, ang fakery. So kailangan sigurong palitan na rin ang paraan sa pagsusukat ng opinyon ng tao. Sabi ko nga, sa social sciences, pag kami yan sa research, gagamit na kami ng ibang method. Hindi na lang kami mag-rely sa survey. Kukuha na ng, yun ang FGD, KII,
Okay,
o ano pang method.
Pero Professor, no, based dun sa sinabi nyo nga na medyo magkasalungat yung mga resulta ng mga iba't ibang survey, no, napakataas pa rin nung Alyansa Slate sa senatorial survey. Can we say then na lame duck na ba itong administration na ito? Or hindi masyadong indicative ang mga survey sa ganyan?
Hindi natin mako-correlate actually sa being a lame duck ang nangyari ngayon na resulta ng pagbaba. Kasi unang-una, hindi nga natin alam ano ba talaga yung factor na nagkukos ng pagbaba. Kasi ang ano natin, wala nga cross-tabulations, hindi natin alam yung mga variables na nagkukos nun eh. Alam lang natin nangyayari sa Luzon, nangyayari sa Class ABC, sa mahihirap, pero hindi natin tinitingnan. Pag nag-research ka, di ba may mga dependent variable ka, may mga independent variables ka, di ba? Yun ang anong problema natin doon. Kasi siyempre magastos yan at saka hindi naman interesado kasi ang tao diyan. But don't you think it's going to be interesting to, for example, learn that N% of the voters of the ex-candidate has this opinion on this issue. Mga ganon. Wala tayong ganyan eh.
But wouldn't you say, Professor, that the results of looking at previous elections, yung mga resulta ng mga survey, medyo ganun din naman po yung resulta ng halalan mismo. More or less.
Hindi naman kasi importante sa atin. Sa akin kasi personally, it's not important for me to look at the politics as a horse race. We keep on projecting that. I think it's about educating the voters. It's about creating a different kind of awareness. Because every time we feed them that kind of scientific way of measuring irrationality, then irrationality will continue. You know what I'm saying? But if you're going to use a different lens in understanding political behavior, baka naman makatulong ang media, makatulong ang mga survey firms para mapalitan ang perspective ng tao. What we're doing right now is surveys, but surveys should not just be an indication of winning and losing. It should also be an indication of the health of the political system. Parang diagnosis din yan kung gaano ka-healthy ang ating political culture, and I think it's not healthy right now.
Sana nakikinig ang Pulse Asia, Okta, at SWS.
Sana din po. Mga kaibigan ko naman nagpapatakbo ng mga yan, kaya nasasabi ko rin yan sa kanila.
And what do they think in your conversations with the heads of
Oh
the
yeah,
survey?
well, some of them are saying yes, we have to do it. But you see, a lot of them are also demand-driven din kasi eh. Wala amang kandidato hindi rin interesado diyan eh. And therefore, ang dapat na interesado...
The funders of the surveys themselves just want to know.
Ang dapat interesado diyan kayo, ang media. Kasi mas mapapalalim natin ang pag-intindi ng politika.
O di, kung sa ganon, subukan pa rin natin, Prof. Yung top 12 ay karamihan ay galing sa administrasyon. Mga siguro 2 lang ang makakapasok na opposition or Duterte, pro-Duterte candidates. What do you make of this?
Well, basically kasi talaga naman pag midterms naman kasi ang administrasyon, ang yan may makinarya. You know, in the last 2 weeks of the campaign, it's going to be machinery. So makinarya pa din yan and the government has at its disposal the machinery, yung
well, briefly, if I may interrupt you, briefly, nagkaroon ng what some would call suction effect. Nagkaroon ng pro-Duterte feelings or sentiments and medyo nakaangat yung mga ibang PDP laban. So,
well, nakaangat sila pero nandun pa rin sila sa labas. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Umangat si Bato, but it doesn't change the fact na batagal naman na siya nasa top 12. Ang mag-ano tayo doon sa baba. Kasi sa baba, actually, umaangat ay si Bam at saka si Kiko. So, yun yung interesting dito. Umaangat si Bam at saka si Kiko.
Pero wala pa rin sa...
Wala pa rin sa top 12. So,
ano sa tingin ninyo ang nakabuti sa kanila at bakit sila nakaangat nitong nalalabing araw?
Eh kasi nga, lumalakas din yung suporta ng mga, sabihin na natin, for the lack of a better word, Pink at mga Dilawan. Nagko-consolidate din sila eh. Alam mo itong interesting dito eh. Nagko-consolidate ang Duterte base, nagko-consolidate din yung traditional opposition. Pero mukhang hindi masyadong inspired ang Marcos base eh. Kasi nga midterm election. Tapos wala namang exciting sa mga kandidato, mga narratives, di ba, na alyansa. So they are not as mobilized. There is no issue if at least dito sa sa Duterte base ang nagmobilize sa kanila yung perceived persecution ng mga Dutertes because of the impeachment of the Vice President and the arrest and imprisonment of the former President. So yun yung nagpupush sa kanila na mag-mobilize and rally around the images, their patrons. Ito namang si Bam at saka si Kiko talagang nakikita na baka may chance kaya nagmo-mobilize din. Yung mga Marcos loyalists, siguro nakikita nila, siyam naman dyan ang naandyan na. I think kampante sila.
All right, we thank you so much for your time. Political scientist Antonio Contreras.
All right, still on elections, but across the pond, Mark Carney's Liberal Party won Canada's federal election, retaining power, but falling short of an outright majority in Parliament. This win follows a surge in support fueled by nationalist sentiment. That's after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened tariffs and suggested annexing Canada. The victory also comes a few days after a car ramming tragedy at a Filipino festival in Vancouver. 4 of the 11 of those killed in Saturday's incident have been identified. They were a school counselor and a family of 3 whose youngest member was only 5 years old. We're going to pause for another quick break, but when we return, Cardinal Chito Tagle is now part of preparations for the conclave. We have the details of that next. Keep it here on One News.
Thanks for staying with us here on The Big Story. The College of Cardinals has ended today's congregation at the Vatican. Jovi Francisco reports was live from Pope Paul VI Hall, where the Cardinals held their meeting. Jovi, we understand that the Cardinals have this vow of secrecy, pero ano bang nakuha mo sa kanila?
Mahirap pag-ambush pala dito, Ses. Lalo na kung merong vow of secrecy. So, medyo habol-habol tayo sa kanila, no? But some of them shared the fact that when they ended their meeting or congregation today, the most important thing they accomplished was the decision to send thank you notes or letters of appreciation to the world leaders who attended the funeral last Saturday, and also to the leaders of the other churches, other religion, or other religious groups. So they'll be sending that very soon. So that's part of the order of business during today's congregation, says.
Let's talk about the role of Cardinal Tagle in the conclave. How significant is this role?
Very significant because para sa magiging treasurer, no, or part of that group. There's a group that was formed by the head of the conclave that will assist him in minding the finances and the funding and the cost that will be incurred during the conclave, says. Of course, parang iisipin parang anong gastos, pero may gastos na sabi nila kakain daw yung mga cardinal at saka may mga materials na kailangan gamitin. Yun lang daw mga just to make sure that the Sistine Chapel is ready, tapos yung pausok doon sa chimney ay mag-work, may cost na daw yun. So, si Cardinal Tagle will be part of that little group, tatlo sila.
How was he chosen?
Draw lots, believe it or not, Ses. Nagkaroon ng pagbubunot. Ang tawag doon, nabunot siya. I think that's the term.
Mm-hmm. And aside from Cardinal Tagle as the assistant to the Camerlengo, did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Who were the others that have roles? What are the other roles?
Okay, there yung iba, says, ay para dun sa mga Eucharistic yung role nila, meaning sa mga rites, hindi ko lang dala yung buong listahan ko, pero more of that, so yung kumbaga yung tungkol sa mga practical things doon napunta sa grupo ni Cardinal Tagle.
Mm-hmm. Wow, but that's a great coincidence, Ano, binulong ng Holy Spirit? Ano kaya? Wag na tayong mag-isip ng ganyan. Okay, while waiting for the conclave to happen on May 7, sabi mo maraming activities from now till then, and you're saying that it's crucial that each cardinal attends also as part of the, you know, everybody's watching each other. So anong mga schedule?
Well, activities is, yun na nga, yung daily pre-conclave meetings na congregation ng tawag dito sa Pope Paul VI Hall. At the same time, in the afternoon, since meron pa rin tayong 9 days of mourning, nakikita-kita pa rin sila dito sa St. Peter's Basilica para dun sa misa. At yun nga, mga opportunity yun para doon sa sila ay magkakilanlan. Yun.
All right, well, we thank you so much. Jovi Francisco reporting to us live from Pope Paul VI in the Vatican. Pope Paul VI Hall, I mean. Thank you.
And now shifting gears to sports, cyclists power through the heat as stage 6 of the Tour of Luzon kicked off early today. The 163.7-kilometer race started in Philinvest Mimosa in Clark and ended in the provincial capital of Lingayen in Pangasinan. Over 100 cyclists from 17 different teams tackled the challenging route. But despite scorching temperatures, Malaysian cyclist Muhammad Wahi crossed the finish line first, clocking in at 3 hours, 31 minutes and 12 seconds. Meanwhile, Pinoy veteran cyclist John Paul Morales was among the top favorites, winning the Red Jersey Award for Most Combative Rider for Tour of Luzon Stage 6. Stage 7 of the historic tour is set to start tomorrow.
Well, summer is indeed upon us, and Boracay is very well known as a go-to destination every summer. But brace yourselves because our big picture tonight is none other than algae season in the island. So tourists will be seeing that the usual white and blue beach is covered in green algae or lumot. This usually occurs during the months of February to May. Research from the DENR shows that soap and detergent residue that are flushed out to the sea are still among the suspected causes of this algae. But according to another research paper by the International Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing, or ISPRS, excess nutrients in the water also stimulate algae growth. Excess nutrients could come from extra human activities or water waste, especially in peak months. So if you are considering a trip to Boracay, non-algae season is usually from November to January.
I didn't know shampoo and soap contribute to algae.
To the algae,
residue.
For all my teen years of going to Boracay, Boracay, there's always algae.
May lumot lagi.
May lumot lagi.
And it's because it's
You're
during the
saying
summer
it's
months.
seasonal?
I think it's seasonal, but I will say though na kumapal siya nung kumapal. Comparing to the first time I went in the late 80s
Parang
to the 90s.
hindi yan nabalita when it was shut down for a while, and then, you know, the water improved, and then now it's back.
Now it's back. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to find out, again, wait to find out
You're
where
right,
the algae is
Boracay every May 1st,
Did
right?
you ever make?
I never went.
It might be my generation. Nahiya ako.
I wonder if they still celebrate Le Boracay.
No
I mean,
more,
May 1 is already on Thursday.
They are so strict now in Boracay. After the rehab, it was never the same. No more parties like that.
But
it's
why
more
is the algae there?
That is the question and the mystery that sana ma-answer in the
Dapat ang mga shampoo, deodorant is also environment friendly.
Yes.
Because you ruin the environment.
The Reef Safe,
Yeah.
diba? You'll see Reef Safe sunblock and I guess other toiletries as well. So something to think about.
Right.
But that's it for the show on this Tuesday evening.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thank you for watching. Have a good night.